The message came through like all the others before it. Commander Vexthor of the Zentari Empire stood in the communication center and watched the transmission beam toward that small blue world in the outer spiral arm. He had been doing this for 30 years now, and his father had done it for 40 years before him and his grandfather for 50 years before that. Earth never answered, and everyone in the Galactic Council had their own theory about why the planet was discovered. During the Great Expansion, when the Council's exploration fleets were mapping every star system within 100,000 light-years, the initial scans showed cities and roads and satellites orbiting the world. The inhabitants were using primitive radio waves and nuclear fission, and they had even managed to put a few of their own people on their moon. By Council standards, they were young, but they were clearly intelligent and developing quickly. Protocol was clear when a new civilization was found. Send an invitation and wait for a response. The Council had sent 847 invitations to Earth over 2 centuries and received exactly 0 replies. Counselor Mira Lynn materialized beside Vexthor in a shimmer of crystalline light. Her species didn't have a physical form in the traditional sense, but she maintained this appearance for the benefit of solid beings. She gestured toward the display showing Earth rotating peacefully in its solar system. Perhaps they cannot hear us, she suggested. Her voice came across as musical chimes that the translation matrix converted to standard galactic speech. Their technology might be too primitive to detect our signals. Vexthor shook his head and pulled up another screen. This one showed decades of intercepted Earth transmissions, radio broadcasts and television signals and digital data streams all pouring out from the planet into space. We know they have receivers, he said. We know they understand electromagnetic radiation across multiple spectrums. They should be able to detect our messages easily. Then why the silence, Mira Lynn asked. Vexthor had asked himself that question thousands of times. Pride perhaps, or fear, or they might have some cultural taboo against speaking to strangers. Some species were like that when they were young. They assumed they were alone in the universe, and when they found out they weren't, the shock caused them to withdraw. The Council had debated the Earth question for generations now. Some members found the humans amusing in their stubborn silence. Others were insulted that such a primitive species would ignore the greatest governmental body in the known galaxy. Most had simply stopped caring. The galaxy was vast and filled with thousands of inhabited worlds. If Earth wanted to sit in its corner and sulk, then let them. There were more important matters to attend to. Deep beneath the Colorado mountains on Earth, a very different conversation was taking place. Director Helen Brooks walked through the secure facility, known only as Deep Site 7. The walls were lined with screens, showing every transmission the Galactic Council had ever sent to Earth. She had worked here for 23 years and had studied every single message. Her assistant Paul Grant followed, her with a data tablet in his hands. Another invitation came through this morning, he said. Number 848, if I'm counting correctly. Helen nodded without breaking stride. File it with the others and make sure the analysis team breaks down every word and image. What did they include this time? The usual, he replied. Technical specifications for their communication protocols and some cultural overview documents about council structure. They also attached what looks like a basic physics primer, probably thinking we need help understanding their science. Helen smiled at that. The Council had no idea that Earth had already mastered everything in their physics primer and had moved well beyond it. Let them think we're struggling with basic concepts, she said. It makes them feel superior, and superior people get careless. They entered the main operations room where dozens of analysts worked at various stations. Each one was studying a different aspect of Council society. Military capabilities and political structures and economic systems and cultural practices. Earth might not be talking to the galaxy, but Earth was definitely listening. Paul cleared his throat. Director, with respect, we've been doing this for 200 years now. Every administration promises they'll be the one to make contact, and every administration decides to wait. Don't you think it's time we actually responded? Helen stopped and turned to face him. She pulled up a holographic display that showed the political map of Council space. The Zentari Empire controlled a third of it, and the Krell Collective controlled another quarter. Dozens of smaller species filled in the gaps, but it was clear who held the real power. Tell me, Paul, what happens when a weak civilization meets a strong one? The weak one learns from the strong one, he answered. They advance faster through technology sharing and cultural exchange. That's what the Council tells themselves, Helen said. Now let me show you what actually happens. She zoomed in on a species called the Talvari. They joined the Council 200 years ago, when their technology level was roughly where Earth's is now. Look at them today, the data was damning. The Talvari had 6 colony worlds when they joined. Now they had 3, and all 3 were heavily in debt to Zentari banks. Their military was a fraction of its former size. Most of their brightest scientists worked for council corporations rather than Talvari institutions. They had a seat at the council table, but everyone knew they were a client state in all but name. This pattern repeats over and over, Helen continued. Species join while they're still developing, and within a century, they're dependent on the older empires. They lose their sovereignty bit by bit until they're nothing but vassals. So we stay hidden, Paul said slowly. We learn everything we can about them while revealing nothing about ourselves. Exactly, Helen replied. We study their technology and improve on it. We watch their politics and learn from their mistakes. We build our strength in secret until the day we finally do make contact. And on that day, we won't be joining the council as some primitive species begging for scraps of knowledge. We'll be joining as equals. Paul looked at the data flowing across the screens. How much longer? Not much longer, Helen said. Come with me. I want to show you something. They took an elevator down 3 more levels to a section that required additional security clearance. The doors opened onto an observation deck, and Paul gasped at what he saw. The room looked out over a massive construction bay carved into the mountain. Inside the bay sat something that looked like a warship, but unlike any design Earth had ever built before. That's the prototype, Helen said. We've been reverse engineering council technology for decades and combining it with our own innovations. This ship is faster than anything the Zentari have, and its weapons are more powerful than what the Krell use. One ship won't make much difference, Paul pointed out. You're right. Helen agreed. That's why we're not building one ship. She pulled up another display, and Paul's eyes went wide. Construction schedules filled the screen, showing shipyards scattered throughout the solar system. Facilities in the asteroid belt and on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and in deep space stations that officially didn't exist. How many, he whispered. The current plan calls for 1,000 warships, she said. We're at 891 now, and we'll hit our target in 4 months. Each one is fully crewed and ready for deployment. Paul stared at the numbers. We've built an entire fleet in secret. How is that even possible? Because everyone thinks we're too primitive to manage something like this, Helen said. The Council looks at Earth and sees a species that can barely leave its own planet. They have no idea we have colonies on Mars and Europa. They don't know about our fusion reactors or our quantum computers or our genetic engineering programs. We've let them underestimate us for 2 centuries. And when we finally reveal ourselves, then the galaxy will learn that humanity doesn't ask for permission, Helen said. We don't beg for technology or plead for acceptance. When Earth joins the Galactic Council, it will be because we choose to, on our terms, as equals to anyone sitting at that table. She looked out at the ship taking shape in the construction bay. For 200 years we've been silent, she continued. We've watched empires rise and fall and species flourish or fade. We've learned everything the Council could teach us and figured out what they couldn't. And soon, very soon, our silence will end. When Paul asked, Helen smiled. When someone needs us, she said. The Council likes to debate and form committees and pass resolutions. They're very good at talking, but not always good at doing. When a crisis comes and the Council fails to act, that's when we'll step forward. Not to ask for a place in galactic society, but to show them what humanity stands for. The ship in the bay was nearly complete. Soon it would join its sisters in the secret fleet humanity had assembled. 1,000 warships waiting in the dark between worlds. 1,000 ships that the galaxy didn't know existed. 1,000 reasons why Earth's silence was about to become the galaxy's biggest surprise. Captain Lisa Monroe floated in 0 gravity and watched the construction robots work on the hull of her ship. The vessel was enormous, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern and bristling with weapons that would make any council admiral nervous. She had been assigned to command the Armstrong 3 months ago, and every day she fell more in love with the deadly beauty of Earth's latest war. Ship. Chief Engineer Daniel Hayes drifted up beside her holding a datapad. The main cannon is installed, he said. We ran the first power test this morning and everything checked out perfectly. She'll punch through any shield the Zentari use and their armor won't even slow her down. Lisa nodded, but her expression was troubled. Daniel noticed immediately because he had served with her for 8 years and knew all her moods. Something bothering you, Captain, he asked. Do you ever wonder if we're making a mistake, she said quietly. 1,000 warships seems like overkill for a species that's never fought an interstellar war. What if we're preparing for a threat that doesn't exist? Daniel was quiet for a moment as he watched a massive missile pod being maneuvered into position. I watched the council recordings from the Talveri crisis, he finally said. Pirates attacked their colonies and killed thousands of civilians. The Talveri begged the council for help, and you know what happened. The council debated for 6 months, Lisa said. She had seen the same files, and the memory still made her angry. 6 months of committees and subcommittees and impact studies, Daniel continued. They argued about jurisdiction and responsibility and the economic cost of military intervention. By the time they finally authorized a rescue mission, the pirates had already stripped 3 entire worlds and disappeared. 40,000 people died while the council talked, and the species that finally helped did so in exchange for mining rights, Lisa added bitterly. They charged the Talveri for their own rescue. Daniel looked at her directly. We're not building these ships to conquer anyone, he said firmly. We're building them so that when Earth steps onto the galactic stage, nobody can do to us what was done to the Talveri. We're building them so we have the strength to help people the council abandons. Lisa felt some of her doubt ease. You're right, she said. I just hope we never have to use them. If we do our job right, Daniel replied, we won't have to. Just having them will be enough. On Earth in the city of Geneva, the leaders of humanity's various governments gathered in a secure conference room. Admiral Richard Cole stood at the front beside a holographic display showing the entire fleet. Ships were represented by blue dots scattered throughout the solar system, and there were a lot of blue dots. Ladies and gentlemen, the Admiral began. I'm pleased to report that Project Prometheus has reached its goal. 1,000 warships are now fully operational. Each vessel is crewed and supplied and ready for immediate deployment. Additionally, we have defensive platforms around every major installation from Mercury to Neptune. President Margaret Weaver of the North American Federation leaned forward. Admiral, these ships use technology we learned from studying council transmissions, is that correct? Yes, ma'am, Cole replied. Every broadcast they sent us was analyzed by our best scientists. We studied their physics and engineering and weapons systems. We took their designs and improved them. In many cases, our ships now exceed council capabilities. Premier Zhang of the Eastern Alliance frowned. Then I must ask again why we continue to hide. If our technology is this advanced, what are we waiting for? Director Helen Brooks stood up from her seat. She had been expecting this question because it came up at every briefing. We're waiting for the right moment, she said. The council thinks we're a primitive species that can't even build a radio receiver capable of hearing their messages. When we finally reveal ourselves with a fleet that rivals the Zentari Empire itself, it will completely change how they see us. Prime Minister O'Connor of the European Commonwealth looked skeptical. Sounds like we're trying to intimidate them, he said. Not intimidate, Helen replied. Establish respect. The council has a hierarchy based on power. Species that join while weak become dependents. Species that join while strong become equals. We've spent 2 centuries making sure we join as equals. And what if they view our military buildup as hostile, Weaver asked. Then they'll be very polite when they tell us so, Cole said with a slight smile. Power gets attention and respect. The council understands military strength because that's the language they speak. When we arrive with 1,000 warships, they'll know immediately that Earth isn't asking for permission to join their club. Zhang studied the display. When do we make our move? Soon, Helen said. We're looking for the right opportunity. A moment when we can demonstrate not just our strength, but our values. The council needs to see that Earth isn't just another empire looking to grab territory and resources. What kind of opportunity, O'Connor asked. The kind where someone needs help and the council fails to provide it, Helen said. When that happens, we step in. We show the galaxy that humanity has both the power to act and the will to do what's right. The meeting continued for another hour as various leaders asked questions about deployment schedules and diplomatic protocols. When it finally ended, Helen and Admiral Cole walked together through the corridors of the building. Do you think they understand? Cole asked quietly. Do they get why we've waited so long? Some of them do, Helen replied. Others just see a fleet of warships and think about all the ways we could use them. But that's always the challenge with power. It's easy to build weapons, but much harder to know when and how to use them. They reached a window overlooking Lake Geneva. The water was calm and reflected the afternoon sunlight. Cole thought about all the people on Earth going about their daily lives with no idea that 1,000 warships waited in the darkness beyond their world. How much longer, he asked. Not long, Helen said. I can feel it. Something is coming. The galaxy has been stable for too long and stability never lasts. When the crisis comes, we'll be ready. 3 weeks later, her prediction proved correct. The monitoring station on Luna picked up a transmission that made everyone's blood run cold. Lieutenant Chris Walker was on duty when the signal came through, and he immediately routed it to every command center on Earth. The voice was desperate and breaking with static. This is Colonial Station Meridian, he heard. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Our shields are failing and we have 40,000 civilians on board. We are requesting immediate assistance from any Council forces in range. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help now. Then there was an explosion sound and the transmission cut to static. Chris pulled up the location data. Meridian Station was in the outer reaches near the edge of Council space. It was a refugee station, mostly housing Varani families who had fled from conflicts in the inner systems. 40,000 people, and most of them were children. He opened channels to Earth Command, and within minutes, Director Brooks was on the line. We heard it, she said. Get me everything you have on Meridian Station and find out what the Council is doing about it. Chris worked quickly, his fingers flying across the controls. The Council has activated emergency channels, he reported. They're broadcasting the distress call to all member fleets and requesting immediate response. Put me through to the Council feed, Helen ordered. The transmission came through clearly. Chris watched on his screen as the Galactic Council chambers filled with representatives from dozens of species. Councillor Vexthor was speaking, and his tone was calm and measured, which somehow made everything worse. We have received the distress call from Meridian Station, Vexthor said. I have consulted with our military commanders, and the nearest Council fleet is the Zentari 3rd Armada. They are currently 3 weeks away at maximum speed. 3 weeks, another councillor shouted. The station won't survive 3 days. Vexthor's expression didn't change. Then we must accept the unfortunate reality that Meridian Station is beyond our immediate reach. We should focus our resources on preventing these raiders from advancing further into Council space. Sacrificing valuable military assets on a doomed rescue mission would be strategically unsound. You're abandoning them, a Varani delegate said. Her voice shook with rage and grief. You're abandoning 40,000 of my people. I'm being realistic, Vexthor replied coldly. The matter is settled. We will observe a moment of silence for Meridian Station, and then move on to other business. Chris felt sick watching the Council dismiss those lives so casually. He looked at his screen where Director Brooks's face showed controlled fury. Ma'am, he said quietly, what are our orders? Helen Brooks smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Get me Admiral Cole, she said, and send activation codes to every ship in the fleet. Tell them to prepare for immediate deployment. Chris felt his heart start to race. We're going in. We're going in, Helen confirmed. The Council just made their choice, and now we'll make ours. 200 years of silence ends today. Earth is going to save those people, and in doing so, we're going to show the galaxy exactly who we are. Within the hour, every human warship in the solar system received the same message. Operation First Contact was now active, and the fleet was going to war. The raiders at Meridian Station had been attacking for 6 hours, and they were confident they would win. Their leader was a scarred warrior named Crexus, who had been raiding Council stations for 15 years without ever facing serious opposition. The Council always arrived too late, and by then his ships would be long gone with their cargo holds full of stolen goods. He stood on his command deck, watching his crews tear through the station's outer hull. The defenders had put up a decent fight at first, but their weapons were designed to stop pirates, not a full military assault. Now their shields were down and their guns were silent. It was only a matter of time before his people reached the valuable storage bays inside. How long until we breach the main cargo section? Crexus asked his second-in-command. 2 hours, maybe 3, the officer replied. The station's internal bulkheads are tougher than expected, but we'll get through them. Crexus nodded in satisfaction. The Council won't arrive for weeks, and we'll strip this place clean long before then. Make sure the crews know to focus on medical supplies and processed metals. Those fetch the best prices on the black market. His sensor operator suddenly looked up from her console with a confused expression. Sir, I'm detecting unusual readings on the edge of the system. What kind of readings? Crexus asked without much interest. Hyperspace signatures, she said. Multiple contacts incoming, and they're moving fast, very fast. Probably a merchant convoy, Crexus said. Ignore them and focus on the station. Sir, the operator's voice rose with alarm. These aren't merchants. I'm counting over 900 individual contacts and they're all military grade. Crexus spun around to stare at her. That's impossible. Check your equipment, it must be malfunctioning. Another operator called out from across the deck. Contacts confirmed, sir, and they're dropping out of hyperspace now, right on top of us. Space itself seemed to tear open as humanity's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. 1,000 warships appeared in perfect formation and their hulls gleamed with fresh paint that bore Earth's insignia. The blue and green world circled. By white stars looked almost peaceful, but the ships, carrying that symbol, were anything but peaceful. Captain Lisa Monroe stood on the bridge of the Armstrong and watched her tactical display fill with red hostile markers. The raider fleet numbered about 40 ships and they were scattered around Meridian Station like predators around wounded prey. Her blood ran cold as she saw the damage they had already inflicted on the station. All ships, this is Captain Monroe of the Earth Defense Fleet, she broadcast on all frequencies. Hostile vessels are ordered to power down all weapons and retreat immediately from Meridian Station. This is your only warning and you have 30 seconds to comply. Crexus stared at his view screen where the human fleet hung in space like an avenging army. His tactical officer was frantically running scans and what he found made no sense at all. Sir, these ships don't match anything in our database, the officer reported. The designs are completely unknown and their power signatures are off the charts. Who are these people? Crexus demanded. Unknown, sir, but they're targeting us with weapons that read as more powerful than anything the Council uses. Crexus made a quick calculation. Unknown meant untested, and untested meant they might be bluffing. No species appeared out of nowhere with 1,000 warships. It had to be some kind of trick, or maybe they were using dummy ships to inflate their numbers. He had faced long odds before and survived through aggression and speed. All ships, he ordered, open fire on these newcomers and show them what happens. When they interfere with us, it was the last mistake he would ever make. Lisa saw the raider ships begin to charge their weapons, and she felt a cold calm settle over her. She had trained for this moment for years, but part of her had hoped it would never come. That hope died as she watched the raiders choose violence over surrender, weapons. Free, she said quietly. The Armstrong's main guns opened, fire and the void lit up with plasma, bolts that crossed the distance in seconds. The lead raider ship tried to raise its shields, but the human weapons tore through them like they weren't even there. The ship's engines exploded in a brilliant flash and the vessel went tumbling through space completely disabled. All across the battlefield, the human fleet engaged with precision that shocked even their own crews. Every ship knew exactly where to be, and every shot hit exactly where it was aimed. The raiders had weapons designed to fight Council vessels, but those weapons barely scratched the adaptive shields that Earth's scientists had developed. Crexus watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. His ships were exploding or going dark or spinning helplessly with their engines blown apart. He tried to order a retreat, but the human vessels had already cut off every escape route. They moved with perfect coordination like they were all controlled by a single mind. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 23 seconds. When it ended, every single raider ship was disabled and drifting. Their weapons were offline and their engines were destroyed. Not one had escaped and not one had managed to inflict serious damage on the human fleet. It was the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Lisa opened a channel to Meridian Station. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline, but her voice was steady. Meridian Station, this is Captain Lisa Monroe of the Earthship Armstrong. The hostile forces have been neutralized and are no longer a threat. We are deploying repair teams and medical personnel to assist you. You're safe now. There was a long silence before someone on the station responded. The voice was choked with emotion and disbelief. Earth? But your world has never responded to any Council contact. We thought you were primitive and isolated from galactic affairs. We've been listening, Lisa said simply. We've always been listening to everything the Council broadcasts. And today, when someone needed help and the Council chose to abandon them, we made a different choice. We came. Admiral Richard Cole's flagship was a massive carrier called the Endeavour, and it moved into position near the damaged station. Repair shuttles and medical transports were already launching from the hangar bays. Cole stood on his command deck and opened a broadcast on every frequency the Council used. This is Admiral Richard Cole of the Earth Defense Initiative, he said. His voice was calm but carried absolute authority. For 200 years, the Galactic Council has sent invitations to our world, asking us to join your community. We chose not to respond because we wanted to develop on our own terms without becoming dependent on others or absorbed into larger empires the way so many young species have been. He paused and looked at the tactical display, showing his fleet surrounding the station. Like protective guardians, today we announce our presence to the galaxy, not as supplicants requesting entry but as equals offering aid. The people of Meridian Station called for help and the Council abandoned them. You discussed and debated and made careful calculations about strategic value, while you talked 40,000 civilians were left to die. His voice hardened slightly. Earth did not talk, we acted. We came with 1,000 warships because we wanted to make something absolutely clear to everyone watching. We come in peace, but we come prepared. Any species that wishes friendship with humanity will find us generous and loyal allies. Any who mistake our previous silence for weakness will face the same fate as these raiders. Cole gestured to a screen showing the disabled raider vessels being taken into custody by human marines. For 2 centuries we watched and learned from you, he continued. We studied your technology and your politics and your wars. We saw how the strong dominate the weak, and how the Council often chooses convenience over justice. Today we show you a different path. He took a breath and his voice softened. Earth is no longer silent. We're here and we're ready to take our place among the stars. But we won't beg for that place and we won't accept a subordinate role. The Galactic Council can choose to accept us as full equals or they can choose to see us as rivals. Either way, humanity is done hiding. The broadcast ended and Cole turned to his communications officer. Send that to every council station and every government in the galaxy. I want everyone to know what happened here today. The officer nodded and began working. Within minutes, the message was spreading across thousands of worlds. Earth had revealed itself and the galaxy would never be the same. On Meridian Station, the survivors watched through viewports as human repair crews swarmed over the damaged sections of their home. The crews worked with efficiency and skill that spoke of extensive training. They brought medical supplies and spare parts, and most importantly, they brought hope. A young Varani child pressed her hand against the viewport glass. She had been terrified for hours as explosions rocked the station, but now she felt safe again. The human ships surrounded them like a protective wall, and nothing would get through that wall. Who are they? She asked her mother. Her mother watched the humans work and felt tears on her face. I don't know, she said softly, but I think they just saved us all. The Galactic Council chambers were in absolute chaos, and Counselor Vexthor had never seen anything like it in his 50 years of service. Representatives from 100 worlds were all shouting at once and demanding answers that nobody had. The massive view screens on every wall showed the same thing over and over. Earth's fleet destroying the raiders at Meridian Station in less than 5 minutes. Order, Vexthor bellowed. We must have order in this chamber. The noise slowly died down, but the tension remained thick in the air. Counselor Mira Lynn floated to the center of the room, and her crystalline form was cycling through colors that indicated extreme agitation. 1,000 warships, she said, and her musical voice carried to every corner of the chamber. They built 1,000 military vessels while we thought they were too primitive to answer a simple message. They weren't primitive, Vexthor said bitterly. They were studying us and learning. From every transmission we sent, we gave them 2 centuries of free education, and they used it to build a fleet that rivals the Zentari Empire. A military analyst stepped forward with data streaming on his portable display. The technology report is deeply concerning, he said. Their ships use design principles we've never encountered before. Their weapons output exceeds our best equivalents by 30% at minimum. Their shields appear to be adaptive and learn from each hit they take. And their coordination in battle suggests either advanced artificial intelligence or a level of crew training that surpasses anything we've achieved. How is this possible? Another counselor demanded. They had no teachers and no access to our advanced facilities. How could they match us in technology? They had something better than teachers, Mira Lynn said quietly. They had motivation. Young species that join the council become comfortable and dependent. Earth stayed independent and had to push themselves. They had to innovate, rather than simply adopt our existing solutions. Vexthor pulled up the tactical analysis of the Meridian battle. Look at their fleet movement, he said. Every ship knew exactly where to be and every weapon fired with perfect timing. They disabled 40 raider vessels without destroying a single one. That level of precision and restraint requires incredible discipline. What do they want? A nervous counselor from a smaller species asked. Are they here to conquer us? The main view screen changed to show Admiral Cole's broadcast message. Vexthor played it again, and the chamber fell silent as they listened to the human's words. When it ended, he turned to face the assembly. They want what we offered them 200 years ago, he said. They want to join the council, but not as junior members or observers. They want full membership with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. That's outrageous, someone shouted. No species joins with such status immediately. It must be earned over centuries through proven contribution and cultural integration. They just proved their contribution, Miralyn pointed out. While we debated and calculated strategic value, they saved 40,000 civilians. They demonstrated both their military capability and their moral character. But they threatened us, another counselor protested. They said anyone who mistakes their silence for weakness will regret it. That's a direct threat to council security, is it? Vexthor asked. Or is it simply a statement of fact? They have 1,000 warships and we just watched what those ships can do. The question isn't whether Earth deserves a seat at this table. The question is whether we're wise enough to accept them as equals, rather than force them to become our rivals. The chamber erupted in argument again. Some counselors saw opportunity in an alliance with Earth. Others feared the disruption such a powerful new member would cause. The debate raged for hours until finally Vexthor called for a recess. He retreated to his private office and found Miralyn waiting for him. She had materialized through the wall rather than using the door. That went poorly, she observed. Vexthor collapsed into his chair. The Zentari Empire has dominated council politics for 300 years. Now suddenly there's a human fleet that matches our strength and we have no idea what else they're hiding. My government is demanding that I oppose their membership application. And will you? Miralyn asked. Vexthor thought about the battle footage he had watched a dozen times. He thought about the precision and the restraint and the fact that Earth had come to save people the council had abandoned. No, he said finally. I won't oppose them because opposing them would be stupid. They've already proven they don't need us. If we reject them, they'll simply operate independently and probably convince other species to ally with them directly. So we accept them as equals even though it wounds our pride. Pride heals, Vexthor said. Getting into a conflict with a species that has 1,000 advanced warships would leave wounds that don't heal. 3 days later, Director Helen Brooks stood in the main hangar bay of the Endeavour, waiting for the council's shuttle to arrive. She wore a simple but elegant suit and stood flanked by Admiral Cole and Captain Monroe. Behind them stood an honor guard of human Marines in dress uniforms. Nervous Paul Grant asked. He stood slightly behind Helen with a data pad full of briefing notes. Terrified, Helen admitted. We're about to walk into the council chambers and demand equality with species that have been spacefaring for thousands of years. Everything we've worked for over 2 centuries comes down to the next few hours. The shuttle arrived and docked smoothly. The airlock cycled and Councillor Vexthor emerged, followed by Miralyn and several other high-ranking council members. Helen stepped forward and extended her hand in the traditional human greeting. Councillor Vexthor, she said. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Vexthor looked at her hand for a moment before grasping it firmly. Director Brooks, he replied. Your species has certainly made an impressive entrance onto the galactic stage. We've had a long time to prepare, Helen said. Would you like a tour of our flagship, or shall we proceed directly to business? I think we've all seen enough of your military capabilities, Vexthor said dryly. Let's talk about what comes next. They moved to a conference room where refreshments had been prepared. Helen had studied council etiquette extensively and made sure to accommodate the various dietary needs of her guests. Once everyone was settled, she began. The Galactic Council has sent 848 invitations to Earth over the past 2 centuries, she said. We chose not to respond for reasons that I hope are now clear. We didn't want to join your community as dependents or as a primitive species that needed guidance. We wanted to develop our own path. And now that you have Miralyn asked, what do you want from us? The same thing you originally offered, Helen replied. We want to join the Galactic Council and participate in governing this region of space. But we want to join as full members with voting rights and equal standing. That's highly irregular, Vexthor said. New members typically spend decades as observers while they prove themselves worthy of full participation. Admiral Cole leaned forward. With respect, Counselor, we've already proven ourselves. We saved Meridian Station when you abandoned it. We defeated a raider fleet that has been terrorizing the outer reaches for years. Our technology matches or exceeds yours in most areas. What more proof do you need? It's not about proof, Vexthor said carefully. It's about precedent and tradition. The Council has operated a certain way for millennia. Helen smiled slightly. Then perhaps it's time the Council evolved. The galaxy is changing, Counselor. Species are watching to see how you respond to Earth. If you welcome us as equals, you show flexibility and wisdom. If you try to force us into a subordinate role, you show rigidity and fear. And if we reject you outright, Vexthor asked, then we operate independently, Helen said simply. We'll establish our own alliances and our own trade agreements. We'll respond to distress calls that the Council ignores. Within a generation, there will be two power structures in this region of space, and they'll be competing for influence. The room fell silent, as everyone absorbed the implications. Finally, Mira Lynn spoke up. The Crystalline Concordat has discussed this matter extensively, she said. We believe Earth has demonstrated both capability and positive values. We vote to accept them as full Council members with all rights and responsibilities. Other counselors began speaking up, and one by one they voiced their support. Some did so enthusiastically, while others spoke with obvious reluctance. When it came to Vexthor, he sat quietly for a long moment. The Zentari Empire acknowledges Earth's strength and capability, he said finally. We recognize that attempting to force you into a lesser role would be counterproductive. We accept your petition for full membership, though I suspect the coming years will be interesting as we all adjust to this new dynamic. Helen felt relief wash over her but kept her expression neutral. Thank you, Counselor, she said. Earth looks forward to working with all Council members as partners and equals. As the meeting broke up and the Council delegation prepared to leave, Vexthor pulled Helen aside. A word of advice, Director, he said quietly. You've won your seat at the table, but now comes the harder part. Maintaining it and using it wisely. The Council has its share of politics and schemes. Don't assume everyone who smiled at you today is truly your friend. Helen met his eyes steadily. We've been watching the Council for 200 years, Counselor. We know exactly how the game is played and we're ready to play it. 3 months had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Council, and the galaxy was still adjusting to humanity's presence. The human embassy on Council Station had become the busiest location in Galactic, space with representatives from dozens of species, waiting in line every day hoping to speak with Earth's diplomats. Director Helen Brooks stood by the massive window in her new office watching ships come and go from the station's docking ports. Some were Council vessels on official business, but many were independent traders and diplomatic couriers all hoping to establish connections with humanity. Earth had become the most sought-after alliance partner in the galaxy practically overnight. Her assistant, Paul Grant, entered carrying a stack of data pads. We have 17 meeting requests for today, he said. The Varani want to discuss joint colony ventures. The Crystalline Concordat is proposing a scientific exchange program, and the Krell Collective is asking about trade agreements for rare minerals. What about the Zentari? Helen asked. They've been quiet, Paul replied. Very polite and very careful not to offend us, but they're clearly watching everything we do. As they should be, Helen said. We disrupted their dominance of Council politics, and they're trying to figure out if we're a threat or an opportunity. Speaking of which, has Admiral Cole sent his report on the fleet dispersal? Paul handed her a datapad. All 1,000 ships have been assigned to various patrol zones throughout Council space. The Council formally requested our help with pirate suppression in 3 sectors, and we've already eliminated 2 major raider groups. Only 2, Helen said with a slight smile. I expected more. The other groups heard what happened at Meridian, Paul explained. Most of them have either disbanded or fled to territories outside Council jurisdiction. Turns out pirates don't like fighting opponents who can actually shoot back. There was a knock on the door and Captain Lisa Monroe entered wearing her dress uniform. She had been promoted to Admiral after the Meridian action, and now served as Earth's senior military representative to the Council. Helen gestured for her to sit. I just came from the Council Military Committee meeting, Lisa said. They've proposed forming a joint defense force for the outer reaches with human and Council ships working together under unified command. What's the catch? Helen asked, because there was always a catch with Council proposals. They want the command structure to favor species with longer Council membership, Lisa replied. Essentially, they'd put a Zentari or Krell admiral in overall command with humans as junior partners. Helen laughed without humor. After we saved Meridian while their fleet sat idle, they want us to serve under their command? That's bold. I told them we'd consider it, Lisa said. Then I suggested an alternative where command rotates between species on a yearly basis with decisions requiring consensus among all partners. How did they react, Helen asked. About as well as you'd expect, Lisa said. The Zentari representative went purple, which I think means he was angry. But the smaller species loved the idea. They're tired of always being subordinate to the big empires. Helen considered this carefully. We need to be strategic about how we push for change. We can't reform the entire council system in 3 months, but we can plant seeds. Tell them we're open to a joint defense force, but only with truly equal partnership. Understood, Lisa said. On another note, we've received a personal message from the Varani government. They want to name their newest colony world after Earth as thanks for saving Meridian Station. That's kind, Helen said softly. Tell them we're honored, but suggest they name it something that represents their own culture and hope for the future. We didn't save them so they'd be grateful. We saved them because it was right. Lisa nodded and made notes on her pad. The Varani aren't the only ones who remember Meridian. Yesterday I received messages from 43 different species asking about defense agreements. They all basically said the same thing. If raiders attack them, they want Earth's help, not the Council's. Because they trust us to actually show up, Helen said. That's valuable but also dangerous. We can't become the galaxy's police force. We need the Council to step up and do its job. Maybe that's exactly what we need to push for, Paul suggested. Use our influence to reform how the Council responds to crises. Make them faster and more effective. Helen looked at both of them. That's the long-term goal, but we have to be patient. The Council has operated a certain way for thousands of years. Changing that will take time and careful diplomacy. A tone sounded indicating another visitor was waiting. Helen checked her schedule and saw it was Counselor Vexthor requesting an unscheduled meeting. She told Paul to send him in. The Zentari counselor entered looking tired. Helen gestured to a chair and poured him a drink from the selection she kept for various species. Vexthor accepted it gratefully. Director Brooks, he began, wanted to speak with you privately about Earth's proposals for council reform. I assume your government isn't pleased, Helen said. My government is furious, Vexthor admitted. They see Earth challenging Zentari authority at every turn, but I wanted you to know that not all Zentari feel that way. Helen raised an eyebrow and waited for him to continue. I've served on this council for 50 years, Vexthor said. I've watched good species be destroyed because we move too slowly or not at all. I've seen corruption and favoritism in systems that protect the powerful while ignoring the weak. When you saved Meridian while we debated, I felt shame for the first time in my career. He took a drink and continued. Earth is disrupting everything and many counselors hate you for it. But some of us see an opportunity. You're pushing the council to be better, and that's exactly what we need. What are you suggesting? Helen asked carefully. I'm suggesting an informal alliance, Vexthor said. Not between our governments, but between individuals who want real change. There are counselors from a dozen species who feel like I do. Together we might actually accomplish something. Helen studied him carefully, looking for signs of deception but seeing only sincerity. That's an interesting proposal, Counselor. Who else is part of this group? Mira Lynn of the Crystalline Concordat, for one, Vexthor said. Several representatives from smaller species who are tired of being dominated by the empires. Even a few Krell who think their collective has become too rigid. And what would this group actually do? Helen asked. Push for reforms, Vexthor said. Faster emergency response protocols and fairer trade agreements and real representation for smaller species. Use Earth's momentum to change things while we have the chance. Helen thought about it for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, Counselor. Let's see what we can accomplish together. But I need you to understand that Earth won't be anyone's puppet. We support changes that make the Council more just and effective, not changes that just shift power from one empire to another. Agreed, Vexthor said. He stood and extended his hand in the human gesture he had learned. To a better council and a better galaxy. Helen shook his hand firmly. To a better galaxy, she agreed. After Vexthor left, Paul returned with a concerned expression. Director, are you sure about working with him? The Zentari have dominated council politics for centuries through manipulation and backroom deals. Which is why having one of them on our side is valuable, Helen said. Besides, I'm not naive enough to think this will be simple. But Vexthor is right that we have a window of opportunity. Earth's arrival shocked the whole system, and while everyone is still adjusting, we can push for real change. And if it doesn't work, Paul asked, then we tried, Helen said simply. That's all we can do, try to make things better and hope others join us. Lisa had been quiet during this exchange, but now she spoke up. You know what's interesting? 3 months ago, Earth was completely unknown to the galaxy. Now we're reforming the council and forming alliances and changing how things work. It's almost hard to believe. Helen looked out the window at the stars beyond. We spent 200 years preparing for this moment. We learned and we built and we planned, and when the time came, we acted. That's the human way, I suppose. We don't do things halfway. The door opened again and a young aide rushed in. Director, the council has just received another distress call. A colony in the northern sectors is under attack by raiders. Helen and Lisa exchanged glances. How far away is the nearest council fleet? Helen asked. 4 days, the aide replied. But the human patrol group Striker Squadron is only 6 hours away. Tell them to respond immediately, Helen ordered. And broadcast it on all council frequencies. Let everyone see that when someone calls for help, Earth answers. As the aide rushed out to relay the orders, Lisa smiled. You're making a statement every single time, Helen said. Every time we respond quickly while the council is slow, we prove that their old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. Eventually, they'll have to change or become irrelevant. Paul pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's patrol routes and council fleet positions. At this rate, we're going to respond to a dozen crises before the council responds to one, he observed. Good, Helen said. Let them see what real commitment looks like. Let every species in the galaxy know that Earth keeps its promises. The comm system activated with a message from Admiral Cole on the Endeavor. Striker Squadron has jumped to hyperspace, he reported. They'll reach the colony in time. The raiders won't know what hit them. Helen felt a surge of pride for her people and her species. 200 years ago, Earth had been alone and primitive by galactic standards. Today, they were saving lives and changing the political landscape of an entire galaxy. Lisa stood up and moved to the window beside Helen. Think we'll make a difference, she asked quietly. We already have, Helen replied. Meridian Station still exists because of us. That Varani child who watched our ships arrive will grow up in a galaxy where Earth stands for something, where power is used to protect rather than exploit. That's worth all the politics and complications. And if the council resists our reforms, Paul asked, then we build our own system, Helen said. We prove that a better way is possible and let species choose which future they want. The council can evolve or they can watch as their relevance fades. Either way, humanity will keep doing what we think is right. The three of them stood together looking out at the galaxy they were helping to reshape. Earth's